Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to day 2 of EngAGE 21, Transformational Aging in a Changing World. To many of you, I say good morning. Some of you, I say good afternoon. And to those of you who are even further east than an afternoon greeting, good evening and welcome. We're coming to you live from downtown Regina, Saskatchewan. My name is Bill Pratt. I'm with Eden Care Communities, and we wanted to acknowledge that we're on traditional lands of the Treaty 4 territory, treaty signed with 35 First Nations across southern Saskatchewan and parts of Alberta and Manitoba, and the original lands of the Cree, Saulteaux, Lakota, and on the homeland of the Métis Nation. Welcome. We're so happy to have you come back today for day 2, the second and final day of EngAGE 21. Yesterday was an extraordinary day with all kinds of insights and inspiring information to make us think about how each of us in the world we travel, can embrace this aging journey. Today is going to be a full day again. We've got sessions on technology and the future, as well as a session on aging in place. And we're going to close the day with Joe, the Skid Row CEO, Roberts. He's going to take us home today. To start us off today, we are so lucky, we are so fortunate to have a gentleman by the name of Nikolas Badminton. You can see him on the screen there. Nick is a futurist and a CEO advisor. He's world-renowned for what he does. He's a consultant, media producer, executive advisor. He's spoken to and worked with over 300 of the world's most important and impactful organizations and governments. He shapes visions for organizations, trillion-dollar companies, progressive governments, and $200+ billion investment funds. And the other part about Nick is he's a great guy. He's very engaging. He's smart. He's easy to listen to. One of the things that he mentioned to me earlier is that most recently he's named a fellow in the Royal Society of Arts, Commerce, and Manufacturing, and that's out of England. And if you don't know what that is, trust me when I say it's a big deal. You have to be invited to be a fellow, and it's quite an honor. And we're honored to have Nick with us today. And in his words from this morning, he is super stoked to be here. So with that, I'm going to turn the floor over to you, Nick, and how about it?
Thank you so much, Bill. And I need to invite you around to my house at least once a week for that same sort of rebel-rousing, positive, motivational speech. Thank you so much for the kind words. And good morning, everyone. I'm really excited to be here at the Eden Care EngAGE conference. And today I'm going to be doing something really special. I've gone away, I've done a specific piece of research for you, like I do with all my clients, and really looking about how now is the time to start planning for what the future could look like for our caring futures. As a futurist, I like to shift mindsets of the people that I talk to. We're so busy with what's happening in the next 2 to 3 weeks, what's happening in next quarter, the plans, the strategies, budgets, and all of those things that we often forget those further horizons. I help my clients look out 5, 10, and even 20 plus years into the future. I write stories of the world in 1,000 years as well. And I like to wonder, what if the world was different from today? What if the world was going to change to be more sustainable, more equitable, and more empowering for everyone on the planet? And what if we can actually make some decisions today strategically to empower our teams to plan for a much more better and resilient future? And that's the work that I do, and that's the work that I've been doing for a number of years now, including the past year of the pandemic. Now, I like to talk about infinite humanity. I like to think about how humanity can really evolve over time. And I do like to start with industrial revolutions. About 280 years ago, we had industrial revolutions that had huge innovations across communications, across transportation and energy. And what we find today is that we're in the fourth industrial revolution. And that means that we've got internetized communications, internetized renewable energy, autonomous vehicles and transportation. And the world is moving faster now than ever before. Some people are saying the next 10 years is going to be some of the golden years for human ingenuity and development. I think that we can look at a little further, but the next 10 years is certainly going to be eye-opening. I'm going to share a little view of what those years look like. But really, over the last 12 months, and it's been about 12 months since all the lockdowns happened, and I'm here in Toronto, the most locked down city in North America, so we all feel it. I feel it, and I'm empathetic with everyone's situation that's out there. But we've seen that the pandemic has shown us that these industrial revolutions that we've got are really challenged. When you see the companies like Zoom have got more financial power and a larger market cap than ExxonMobil, you know that the world's shifting and changing. It's digital, and the world is really starting to progress in lots of different ways. But it's taken a pandemic to show us the fragility of our systems and that we have to build resiliency, we have to be prepared, and we have to be ready for change. What's really interesting when we look at Canada itself and we look at the aging population, by 2030, about 9.5 million Canadians are going to be over 65. That's about 23% of the population, and that's going to get bigger and bigger over time. We're not going to grow the population of Canada by having more children. We're going to grow through immigration. So we're going to find that Canadians are going to get older, and as a country, we're going to get more diverse and we're going to grow. And now I like to think about a riff and an evolution on that industrial revolutions. We've already seen the communications, energy, and transportation. And I like to add something to this for what I call infinite humanity. It's ecology and human biology. This is the new factor. We're human. We breathe. We eat. We go about our business on a day-to-day basis. And what we need to do is consider all four of these dimensions as we start to progress into the future, because that added dimension of biology and ecology is going to be the thing that we're going to have to really master. There's going to be more data. There's going to be more technology. There's going to be ways that we operate normally that affect that dimension. So we have to come back to that idea of infinite humanity, and it's infinite because we've got no limits to what we can be. And really grounding ourselves as we start to look at through some of the developments that I'm going to present in this presentation, there are three factors that are interlinked, and that's that we need to engender the idea of building empathy in our teams. We need to give equity to the people that we look after and the staff that we work with and the solutions and partners that we choose. And we must provide the best care that we can. All three of these work together, and I've considered these deeply as I go through this presentation. Okay, let's look at technology. I've been a technologist for over 25 years now. I played with artificial intelligence in the 90s, and I'm a master of data and building huge information systems. Went through advertising, and now I focus on the future. But what if we reconsider the care industry with the tech that's coming? 32% growth in robots and what's happening out in the world right now. We saw Amber talk a lot about robotics yesterday, and I've got a little short video that I'm going to present a few of the things that I think are really important out there. We really do live in a miraculous world. There's a lot of great robots out there that help us with everything from lifting to care to communications through to self-driving vehicles. There's lots of discussions about how this technology can help us. I like to think about how the technology could potentially remove the human element from care and how we need to start to consider that in the scheme of things. Now, we've kind of entered a new world of what some are calling fully automated luxury communism. The idea that over the next 20 to 50 years, suddenly robots and automated systems, applications and technology can remove the need for work, for having to interact too much with people that we need to care for. And our lives can be this beautiful sunrise of opportunity. Well, I don't think that the world is going to be that way. I think that we need to have deep human to human connection, and we can't just automate everything away. In a post-scarcity world, the fully automated luxury communism isn't necessarily going to be a promise that I think is going to come to light, because I think that all of us that care for other humans and that care for each other are really going to double down on the humanity and the connection there. But what's really interesting is today we're starting to see people relying more and more on their devices. Over 4 hours a day are spent on TVs, computers, tablets, and other devices in North America. So, more and more people are really delving into the communications there. If you've got kids, you know that they're heads down into their tablets and computers than having conversations out there in the real world, even if they're in the same room as each other. So we have to be really cognizant of this. And this is coming into the elder care community. There's lots of people promoting solutions that are technology focused. And, going into those screens isn't necessarily going to be the future that I want to see. But it's interesting because you can design devices that can be really useful for older people. So Samsung had this idea. They said, okay, let's design a phone. And this is the Samsung Taco Lite. Let's design a phone that's simple to use for older people. Now, they had a dilemma. They launched it. They thought it was going to get a lot of uptake. And they were getting feedback from people saying, well, I bought it. I don't know how to use it. So what they did was they reached out to a company called Special Projects. And they said, can you redesign our phone or redesign our operating system? These older people can't operate this. And Special Projects looked at this problem and thought, well, maybe there's a better way. Now, the problem with the Samsung phone wasn't that it was designed badly. It was actually designed incredibly well. They just hadn't considered how older people learn how to use new technology. So Special Projects stepped up. They create those amazing books that could step you through anything that people wanted to do. So, older people, they were more used to books. That was the insight. You could put the phone in the book. It'd tell you exactly what to do. Amazing. Over time, you no longer need the books. And I think when we look at technology, we need to start to think about this relationship between the people that use the technology and the technology itself. And I want to introduce a concept here as well of calm technology. The idea that there can be technology out in the world that isn't demanding our attention, the notifications, the texts, all of those things can get overwhelming for people, especially older people as well. And my friend Amber Case wrote this book called about calm technology. The idea has been around for a long time. It's the idea that technology can exist in our periphery. And in that periphery, it can be useful. One great example of technology that exists in our periphery is the Amazon Alexa device. So it's there when we need it, and we can call out, it can deliver information on demand, but it just disappears into the background of our homes. And I think that this kind of technology and voice-activated technology, very much like Amber went through yesterday, is really interesting to look at as being useful for care, because it doesn't overwhelm the environments where we provide the care, or the homes where people live. Okay, out of technology into a brave new frontier, the frontier of longevity. And there's a lot of people pioneering in this field. What's really interesting is that today, a 75-year-old pretty much feels like a 65-year-old did in the 1970s. And I'm pretty sure in 40 years' time, when I turn 80, 88, 89 years old, I'm going to feel pretty young as well. And that's because I'm going to have the opportunity to look after myself, maybe to invest in some solutions that elongate my life and create longevity. About 50% of people aged 85 and older claim to be healthy enough to work as well. So, we're kind of entering an ageless revolution. And even the people that need care, they might not need it all of the time. And the idea of distributed care is incredibly important going forward versus the care homes that we've got today. And what's really interesting is that the spending power of people 60 and over, and this is going to grow over time, is really powerful. Like $15 trillion on a yearly basis is spent by that age group. A lot of that's going to be spent on care and health and wellness, and it's certainly going to be invested on longevity solutions as well, as they get more affordable and more accessible. And if you look at the longevity market, and here we've got a picture that's a snapshot from 2019 of what that market looks like, we can see that everything from geoscience through to gene therapies, regenerative medicine is becoming big business. There's lots of investors. There's countries that are really doubling down on this world and really providing that care. And some people are saying that 20% of the global domestic product is going to be in the longevity market. That's about $27 trillion. It's a fairly unbelievable figure. But if you think about it, that's a huge opportunity. Now, providing care, providing solutions, technology, human care, and otherwise is going to be really big business going forward. Okay, it gets really interesting at this point of the presentation. I get super psyched talking about this kind of thing. But what happens when, unfortunately, we pass away, or our loved ones pass away as well? Well, maybe there's an opportunity to provide care there. I love this quote by Carl Sagan. I would love to believe that when I die, I'll live again, that some thinking, feeling, remembering part of me will continue. Now, Carl Sagan isn't with us anymore, but I certainly watch a lot of his videos and listen to a lot of his speeches and read his books. He's an incredible author and speaks about what humanity is in the concept of the universe. And what's interesting looking forward is that we try and build a sense of nostalgia and to try and connect with our past, to try and understand where we've come from and what we do. And recently there was an application out there, and it was for a company that was very similar to 23andMe and these other companies that enable you to look at your genetic lines and also look at your ancestry as well. And they were like, oh, you can make an image of your grandparents or even older than that come to life through artificial intelligence. Now, I've saved us that particular animation here, but this is my beautiful grandmother. And Ada was quite the character. But when I put it into this system, suddenly she came to life. It's quite emotional. That nostalgia is really important, but it doesn't need to define everything that we are in life. But this is the kind of technology that's going to be there. And it's going to feel like the people that are like long gone or recently passed away are there with us. This is someone really interesting. This is Eugenia Koida and her one of her best friends, Roman. Now, Roman passed away. And after a while, Eugenia thought, okay, I've got the technological skills to take all of his emails, all the text messages, social media messages I've had, to upload that into a system that I can write that's artificially intelligent, and I can have a conversation with him again. And that's exactly what she did. She built an application that was exactly like her best friend. And it could have generative text that could assume certain contexts of the conversation and feel like Roman was still alive. Now, this gets a little dystopian and a little strange, but I do think that this could actually be big business going forward. Well, people like Microsoft also think it's big business as well. There's a lot of patents out there about encoding who you are as an individual through the data that you've pushed out into the world. And we push out more data today than we ever had, and our kids are going to continue that legacy. And what if you can actually capture the essence of who we are as humans, encode that, and share that with the world? And then it gets really strange when you get people like William Shatner step up. And this was just this week, so I wanted to add this to the conversation. William Shatner, one of my friends calls him Canada's finest Shakespearean actor. I love William Shatner. If you ever get to see him speak live, he's hilarious. Very, very smart man. He's just gone into a partnership with a company, and they're going to encode him. And you're going to be able to have conversations for years and years with William Shatner whilst he's still here, or even passed along. And then you can really have, Captain Kirk, William Shatner, whoever, for the rest of your lives. And these kinds of promises of longevity of conversation with people could be interesting. If you think about this, it's not just actors, maybe scientists, maybe the big influencers of the world could still be writing books. They could still be influencing policy and government after they've long gone. And then it gets super weird. There's lots of companies out there that are trying to capture the essence of who we are by getting people to download their consciousness. Now we're in the realms of science fiction, but there are companies out there. Here's one particular company that's saying, okay, we're a startup. We can upload your mind to our computer systems. Unfortunately, you have to die in the situation. That's going to improve over time, I certainly hope. And what's interesting is there's work happening already to work out, all of the patterns in our brain and what is consciousness, the connectome. And they've done this with a fruit fly, and it cost a lot of money, $40 million, about 25,000 neurons. If you look at a human, we're about 90 million neurons and 100 trillion synaptic connections. So can we ever really capture what our consciousness is and who we are to add that flavor to that data that we've pushed out to the world? Well, I actually think yes, and I'm not exactly sure when it's going to happen. But if you look at the Genome Project that started in the year 2000, it was $100 million to sequence the first genome. Today, it's about $1,000, and there's hundreds of millions of genomes that have been sequenced out there. So is that going to happen with our consciousness? Yes. What's the time scale on that? Well, let's look out to 2100 and let's revisit it then. Okay, but where do we go from here? If we've got this technology and we've got the ability to be ourselves, whether we're here or we're not, what's the world going to be like? What considerations are there out there? Well, I had to go and visit a different place to look at that. So come with me. In this presentation, I've covered a lot of different solutions that enable us to connect more deeply with the people that we care for and to connect them with us. But what is this world that we're destined for? We're surrounded by technology. We've ultimately become cyborgs, and we're connected with those devices and platforms that we love and ultimately trust. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but we could find ourselves in a metaphorical matrix of sorts. And here inside the matrix, we have two choices. Take the red pill or the blue pill. As Morpheus says to Neo, this is your last chance. After this, there's no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. And Wonderland is real life, and we can really make it a world of wonder. Technology does help us become more than who we are, but I don't think it needs to control what we do and how we operate in life. It doesn't need to change humanity. We've got a strong sense of what that is anyway. So let's bear that in mind as we continue this discussion and start to look at how the world can be better through more humane and deeply connective solutions. It's always a bit strange when I go to that place, But, you know, this is all about having fun. And I like to think about different contexts for thinking. And one of those different contexts for thinking beyond technology is about healing journeys, deeply connective, religious or otherwise experiences as well. If you look at how our mind and our consciousness works, it's really fascinating, and I've underwent a lot of different courses to look into this. So we consciously soak up information, about 40 bits of information per second. We process that consciously. It means that we don't trip over flagstones on the side of the street that are flipped up, and we generally don't hurt ourselves as we go walking about life, cooking food, and looking after our families. But subconsciously, 40 million bits of information per second are being soaked in. Our subconscious can soak up so much more. This is why we have people that can be really empathetically connected to the world at a deeper level. And if you can train yourself to start looking further, to start looking at different ways of connecting with that can be really valuable, especially in the context of trauma and a number of other areas that can cause mental health problems. Now, I've practiced meditation, EMDR therapy that helps realign the memories. I do Psych K, which is a natural language processing, sort of the reprogramming of the subconscious. I look at things like emotion code. I've done breath work, which is incredibly powerful. And I've even looked at music therapy. And music therapy is used a lot, especially with people with dementia, to be able to bring back memory and to create happiness in life. So there's a lot of power out there to be able to look towards therapeutic solutions. I think that therapies and this kind of provision of service is going to be essential for care looking forward. And now getting a little bit more esoteric and looking forward even more, you can start to think about psychedelic therapy as well. Now, we know that about $8 billion is spent in North America recreationally on psychedelics. And certainly a lot is spent medically these days as well as that market starts to grow. And we can see that everything from psilocybin mushrooms, MDMA, ketamine, ayahuasca ceremonies, and DMT, where you work with shaman, ibogaine with shaman again, that deals with depression, that deals with everything from addiction and beyond, can really help people look at themselves, go deeper, and heal a lot of the multi-generational trauma that maybe we're born with, or the things that we've dealt with in our lives. Now, a lot of this has been something I've studied over time. I've seen people change their lives entirely. Tapping into the subconscious, again, is going to be big business in the care world. If we look specifically at psilocybin mushrooms, you know, this isn't about going out to the forest, taking some mushrooms, and 15 hours later start saying about the wondrous trips that you had. This is about going to places and under the guidance of psychotherapists and counselors, being taken through journeys. And they've actually found through studies in New York City and beyond that you can take people to deal with their own mortality and to prepare for the future. And the way that they do that is by using the power of psilocybin to connect neurons in the brain. This is a frontal lobe that's connected through the use of psilocybin and therapeutic uses. You can connect lots more different parts of your brain. Those bits of information per second get dialed up, and you can really tap into that subconscious. And people have been found to deal with addiction, come out of depression, and be ready for end of life when they're actually finding themselves with terminal illness in much more effective ways than say straight counseling or dealing with it themselves. So this is going to be big business going forward as well. There's companies that have popped up all over North America. This is Field Trip. These are in Canada. These are down in the States as well. And you can literally go in, make an appointment. You can go through, say what your challenges are, and then you can start dealing with things in terms of a course of treatment. So let's think about rethinking care and how holistically we can really build something that's better. This is about empathy, care, and equity, very much like I started this presentation with. And everything that I've spoken about today needs to be carefully considered. We can't just go careening in and saying, hey, do this, do that, use this technology. Hey, come into this therapeutic session and take this pill. That's not how things work. This is a careful balance. And that balance, whether it's technological or human-based, is really important to look at as well. And one solution that I think is really important to highlight, and apparently someone brought this up yesterday as well, is around dementia villages. The Hugewik is a place within the city of Weesp in the Netherlands, and it's just like any other neighborhood there. It's creating normal life for people living with severe dementia. It's a built environment. It's software and it's staff. It's got pubs. It's got theatres. It's got greengrocers, and it's got the ability to live life in the way that you want to live life. And it's about focusing on what people can do, not necessarily what they can't. So there's this shift of focus. What's interesting is that these communities have started to spread all over the world. There's one in Langley out in British Columbia as well. So take a look at that. But building these deeply empathetic connections is human. And that's the message that I'd like to leave here. You know, at the beginning, I said, let's shift our mindsets from what is, what we're dealing with every day, what we have to do, what we're planning for in the next 3, 6, 12 months, to shift our mind to what if. What if the future is deeply empathetic and equitable, and we can provide care in so many new ways that people live for longer, they have happier lives, they've got deeper connections with their families, and they can go further in their lives and really be more than they could ever want to be in their final years. And I hope that this is the focus that happens in the world generally. And I hope that Eden Care and the people at the conference today really enjoyed this presentation. I'd really love to accept some Q&A, and Bill's going to facilitate that. And do drop your questions in the comments bar to the side. Thank you so much.
Hello, Nick.
Hey, thanks very much, Bill.
Fantastic. That was just so inspiring and futuristic, and I loved your trip to the future, to 2100s. That's great. Thank you for coming back. We appreciate that. Got some questions for you. We've got about 23 minutes here to have some questions. Are you up for some questions? So I was wondering, there's a whole lot of things I'd love for you to unpack for us. And what I'm wondering is, can you talk a little more about equity? You talked about empathy, care, and equity, and how the three are interacting. Can you just give me a little more insight? Help us understand when you talk about equity. What are you getting at there?
Yeah. So equity is the ability for people to have. Can you just mute there, Bill? Sorry, I couldn't hear you back there.
Okay. Are you okay now?
Yep, that's a lot better. Sorry.
Okay.
So equity. Look at equity. Equity is the idea that you give people the power over their own destiny. They're part of the solution. They own the solution in a way. So it's not just the case of like, oh, this is what we think you should do. You do this. It's about, this is what we think you should do. What do you think? Do you have any improvements to make? Oh, let's look out to the community. Let's take feedback from them and holistically evolve what we're providing for people based on what they want. And this is about, enabling people to do the things that they want to do and not just fit into a regimen or a schedule that we think is best for them. But that equity is about them building their own future and building their own reality and to be there. And it's really interesting. This is going to shake up the idea of business models. Some people might have equity stakes in Eden Care going forward just by being part of the community, right? They might have a shareholder agreement where they've got an ability to vote if they're able to do that, all their families. So that's what I mean by equity. It's about having skin in the game and also building that two-way relationship that creates a holistic view about what I need as an individual and what you need as an organization, and finding that common ground and delivering amazing care.
So then that links perfectly when you talked about what residents can do, as opposed to what you can't do, right?
Exactly, absolutely.
Yeah, so let's take that equity a little bit further. And so we get that part. So today sometimes we hear the phrase digital divide, haves and have-nots. Does that give you pause for concern, or where do you land on that? Or is it just going to come and we're all going to be there whether there's a divide or not? Help us understand that.
Yeah. When I talk about infinite humanity or even the fourth industrial revolution that comes before that, there's the ability to spend your way into a new world. And that's kind of what the digital divide is. Do you have the device? Do you have the systems? Do you have the access? Do you have the capabilities to use these systems as well? Have they been designed for you to use? And if we think about that, that's where the divide is, because a lot of people haven't created solutions that are free or accessible or affordable for everyone to use. So I think the longevity market is about a huge amount of digital divide. Stem cell therapy and drugs and all sort of cryogenic sort of treatments and whatever. All of this stuff costs money. And sure, you might be able to eke out a year here and a year there by implementing different therapies or drugs and whatever. But so this divide is happening across on a number of fronts, digital and otherwise. So what we're going to find over the years is that divide is going to shrink. I think in the last year, we found a lot of people using tablets and computers and connecting in new ways than they've ever done before. And that's because everyone was forced to do it. What's happened now is that culturally that's been embedded. That digital divide has got a lot slimmer and people are more attuned to be able to use solutions. So, for example, Facebook's got a screen called Portal. You can literally put it on the wall and you can let someone have access to your home that's a loved one. So you could do that with someone in care. You can always have a conversation with them if they ever want to have a conversation with you. And that kind of thing is beautiful, and it gets cheaper and cheaper and cheaper over time. The one thing we need to be careful of as things get cheaper and that divide gets slimmer, then we ultimately become a product. So we have to be careful the data that we feed into the systems. And in the future, it's like, it's our images and it's time and it's our voice and it's the data that we put into systems that support us. It's going to be monetized and we're going to be the product. So we have to be a little careful there. And this comes back to the idea of equity and really giving people power over their own privacy and identity as well.
Excellent. Thank you for that insight. So as we start to, move this way, tell me a little bit about where you see the role of government. Do you see governments as leaders, followers, unwilling participants? Where do you land on this? The role of government and quite frankly, government funding and government policies.
Government moves more slowly than these trillion-dollar unicorns and the billion-dollar tech companies and even the startups that have got hundreds of millions of dollars raised. And that's because they operate in a much more bureaucratic system. They've got to consider everyone. They've got to consider those policy decisions. What government's going to be really good at is having the relationships with the company that's providing the solutions by ensuring that policy does change. And I've worked a lot with governments around this to think about, public administration and policy and how we can be predictive, how we can work with these companies and see what's on the horizon. As a futurist, I work with governments to do exactly this. What's coming in 20, 30, 40 years is a big question. And that is something that a government doesn't do a lot, but it's starting to wake up to. So government needs to be aware of the horizons, the solutions that are there, and how it can create access for everyone to those solutions so that the world is a good place for people to age in and enjoy their lives. So that's how I see government working. There's a lot of work to do. Interestingly enough, Denmark has created an ambassador to Silicon Valley. So not to a country, just to Silicon Valley to learn what's happening there. I don't necessarily think that that's going to be a solution for somewhere like Canada. Luckily enough, Toronto is an incredible center. Places in Saskatchewan, Saskatoon, even Regina, Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver, Victoria, all these places in Canada doing amazing things with technology. And now because everyone is remote, people can create technologies and solutions anywhere. Distributed care can be provided from anywhere, and people to access solutions that may be even homegrown on a solution that's needed right here needs to be focused on the value you can bring to people, not necessarily about the market cap or how rich you're going to be as a founder. So, we have to work that out. And this is where the government, technology companies, and other, people in the longevity solutions category, big pharmaceutical and whatever, need to have a closer relationship and really see a way of creating that, again, back to equity again, Bill.
Right. So let's extend the government. So because the other two players or sectors, when we talk about the aging process, we talk about there's the for-profit sector and then there's not-for-profit and charitable sector.
Yeah.
How do you see those two contributing? We understand what you're thinking about. Where do you see the other two fitting in?
Yeah, so I mean, we've certainly seen this discussion a lot in the past year, right? And it's about what people pay for, what level of care they get, government versus private. I would like to be able to turn around and say, you know what, everything should be not for profit. Everything should be operating. There are great thinkers out there like Jeremy Rifkin that talk about zero marginal income and revenues and companies that don't operate for profit at all in the world, and how widespread that's going to be. And I do think, going forward in the next sort of 50 to 100 years, we're probably going to see that as a trend really catching on fire. I think in the short term, next 20 to 30 years, I think for-profit's going to be there. I think that more of those for-profit companies are going to be supporting the not-for-profits. I think a lot of the income that they make is going to start to go to more charitable foundations that support the bigger picture. That's certainly what I hope for anyway, Bill. So yeah, right now there's that balance, but I think that maybe there needs to be some kind of umbrella across all of them that really focuses on creating some kind of holistic thinking that everyone can benefit from. And I think that there's been a little disconnect in that so far. So I do think that needs to be rectified somewhat. I think government needs to take the lead, but I think that all of the companies, whether they're not for profit or for profit, need to step up and say, okay, let's get together, let's make this happen, let's make the world a better place, and let's share what we learn and the solutions that we use. And then suddenly, you can go from care in one place to care in another. It feels very similar, and it's continually progressing.
All right, so let's shift gears right back to the very beginning of your presentation when you introduced the concept of infinite humanity to us. Brilliant concept. Tell us a little more about the biology and ecology. I know you talked a little bit about it there, but can you unpack that a little more for us?
Yeah, sure. So, okay, two parts of this. Ecology, we need to look at the world. We need to look at factors that are changing. Climate change is real, and it's really affected a lot of what's happening out there in the world. We're going to get warmer, weather's going to get stranger. Canada's quite temperate and seasonal, so we're not seeing things as difficultly as maybe the southern United States, South America, even places like Africa as well. But needless to say, we're getting warmer as a planet, and it's going to get stranger. So from an ecology perspective, I like to focus in and look at that. We need to take that into consideration because it affects all the other dimensions. Going alongside that, the biology of who we are. We've been humans for thousands of years with, the elements of certainty and variety, contribution, significance, growth, connection, love. All these things define who we are. But biologically, we have to operate within these systems. But what's interesting is that now we can capture data from the biological functions that we have, whether you've got an Apple Watch on or a Fitbit, or through the cameras that point at us every single day, and people can have that data do some good in the world. So I think that comes into how systems operate, how we go towards a sensory economy. Amber talked about the Internet of Things yesterday, and we're headed into a trillion sensor economy where we're surrounded. The devices that we have can measure how fast we're going, even when we're falling over, what mood that we have. And all of that comes into the scheme of things. So infinite humanity is about adding that dimension of ecology and biology to give context of where we are in the world, and also to augment that pile of data that we have. And if you can point things like machine learning, artificial intelligence at that, you can uncover a huge amount of value and create better solutions going forward and give better insights back to us. And when people talk about artificial intelligence, I know Amber was like, is AI going to come and kill us all? And Stephen Hawking sort of jokes around with John Oliver and whatever. Well, I don't think it's that simple. I think it's about human and the machine. And that's what infinite humanity is based on as well.
Wow, that's a great answer. So let's bridge that from the infinite humanity and the AI, people living with dementia, living with Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
Help us understand, what do you see for that? I mean, you sort of tiptoed around it, or you introduced it a little bit, but help us understand this. So someone today living with dementia, how AI and infinite humanity is going to help them.
Yeah, back to the human and the machine. Can we suddenly give people with degenerative diseases, whether they're physical or something like dementia, and give them devices that suddenly bring them back to a normal state of function? Well, not necessarily. I mean, can these kinds of systems be used to help with preventative medicine solutions and preventative activities? Sure, it can. Can it monitor? Can it surveil what we are and when we need help? Absolutely, it can. But I like to think that the therapies, the research and development, and everything that's going on to ensure that fewer people deal with dementia in their lives, and to deal with that through genetic therapies or even gene editing prior to birth, which is a little bit dark as well, can actually be considered in the scheme of things. So artificial intelligence is really interesting here because it's one of those technologies that's going to change absolutely everything. It's going to be in every device, every system. It's going to be consistently learning, and it's going to be doing good things. We're going to remember humans are behind the machine as well, right? We tell it what to do. If something's going to be evil, then it's because some bad people were part of the situation. So there are some checks and balances there. I'm no expert on dementia, but I know that dementia and other conditions that are degenerative are hugely impactful on families. You can try and find some coping and care that comes from solutions, and maybe that's where technology steps up. But we can't forget, Bill, like this human element and the trained carers, the people that know how to connect, because that's still the differentiator here. It's very difficult to encode empathy, humor, this connection. You can't do that. I know the video I showed earlier was about, you can stroke these robotic dogs. And I see in the comment that, some people have deployed these technologies. They're incredibly useful, but they're point solutions. Holistic solutions come from holistic thinking human beings. We're the most efficient, sensory, intelligent beings on the planet. And we shouldn't really forget that when we start to think about technology and these sort of techno overlords that are coming from Silicon Valley saying, we can change the world. It's only $25 a month, right?
Well said. Well said. So I want to. We've got some global concepts. Let's come back to something that's very real. Let's talk about the self-driving vehicles.
Yeah.
And so, watching that clip, and when you work with older persons and you listen to what they're saying, an older person's world will shrink as we age. Right? We lose our driver's license. Maybe we move out of our primary residence. Our friends pass away. The world shrinks, and you start living and you lose your driver's license. Huge.
Yeah.
How do you work with, like, I'm going to say the auto industry, government, to convince them that the opportunity for an older person to hop in a self-driving car and to go see the world, like to see their neighborhoods, to get out and visit? How do you convince them that this is a good thing to do?
Interestingly enough, there's been some companies. There's one company called Voyage, and I think Voyage has just been acquired by General Motors. And Voyage was actually doing a lot of its trials and testing in a place called the Villages down in Florida, which is a retirement community. Because the use case is so strong for that community, you can order a car on a phone, or in some cases you can even just do it the old way by phoning someone, right? Or maybe you've got a button at home you just hit. The car turns up, you jump in there, you say where you want to go, or you type that into a tablet, and then off you go. I think that it's one of the most beautiful use cases as well for people that are literally told that they can't drive, whether they're younger or older, right? And I do think that I've got a 7.5-month-old, right? And he is probably never going to drive a car. He's never going to have a driving license. And he's going to literally say, you used to drive cars that used to have smoke coming out the back? What's a steering wheel? And he's going to look at me like I'm mad. And you know what? That's okay with me. I think that this future is going to be really interesting. What we also have to be careful of is, if we've moved to this world, how are we being monetized in the situation? Is it going to be accessible? Governments are going to have to subsidize this. It's interesting. There's a place in Ontario called Innisfil, and Innisfil outsourced their public transportation to Uber. It's quite a progressive idea. But what happens if Uber changes the rules or wants to take their business somewhere else? Then the city is left on its own. So we have to have some sort of levels of service agreements, whatever. I don't think people providing self-driving cars is going to change. It's still going to be the automotive manufacturers. It's going to be technologists. If you look at a company like Tesla, about 800,000 of their cars can have a software update and be completely self-driving in the next couple of months. That's pretty amazing. It's these sort of mega shifts that are going to change the world entirely. I drive an electric car. I can't wait to have a car that can drive itself. In fact, I can go onto the internet, put my credit card in, and buy one today. So these are the signals that I look at that tell me that the world is going to change. Is that going to be amazing for older people that can't drive anymore? Absolutely. In these closed communities and even out in the wider world.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you for that additional insight to that. And you said something earlier in your presentation. You said double down on humanity. And you've talked a lot about humanity, how it intersects with with the technology and everything like that. And over the course of yesterday and later today, we're going to hear a lot about some amazing gadgets and technology that enhance quality of life. Can you just maybe springboard from your statement of double down on humanity? Like what are you talking about there? Help us tell us more about that.
Yeah. We've been trying to unravel the psychology of humans for a good couple of 100 years now. And even before that, before we even called it psychology. Now, I've got a psychology degree, and I also did that with computing. I looked at AI and I looked at neural patterns and all of these things, right? And one thing you realize is as you start to unravel this, how complex humans are and how complex as a society humanity is as well. We have to double down because we need to try and understand constantly how society is changing, how we interact with each other, how those conditions of certainty and variety, significance, growth, contribution, all of these things that have been with us for thousands of years and will be with us for 1,000 years into the future are really influencing the life. There's something called human-centered design. All of the systems and processes, places that we live, built environments need to be built around human needs, not because something's cool or because, we don't have the budget. It's about building something for people to actually have access to, on-demand services, built environments, technologies, artificial intelligence, everything. This is all great. That new techno world is going to be real, and it's going to be here even more than it is today. But doubling down on humanity is, let's not forget who we are, why we're here, why life is important, and why connection is incredibly important in care and beyond. Because without that, we're nothing. Because suddenly, if we've got facilities where it's 100% autonomous and you put a human into that, whatever age they are, that's not good. That's not a good human environment. That's not feeding what that person needs. That person needs connection. They need empathy. And we all know in the past year, we all need a hug once in a while, right, Bill?
Fair enough. Well, so sort of in the last 90 seconds before we come to your final. Here's my last words for you to take with you. You talked about the pandemic. It has forced a lot of significant changes in how we do things. I mean, it's come at a cost. Looking ahead, from your view, what do you think it's going to take to keep us moving? I mean, we certainly don't want another pandemic. We don't want catastrophic events to make these things happen.
Yeah.
What do you think it's going to take for us to keep moving and getting to the future that you've laid out in front of us today?
It's that mind shift change, right? So move from what is to what if. Be anticipatory, like really anticipate the risks that are coming. Design futures. You can do this. You can sit down, you can see the signals, very much like I presented today, and you can design a future, say, what's the evolution of this? Tell stories. I'm working with a client right now, and I'm writing a set of science fiction stories for them to reimagine how sales and bids work and how project management works. And to do that, I'm writing science fiction about the year 2035. And what's interesting about that is it helps people get out of today, and they can suspend that disbelief, and they can go to that future. And what you can do then is work out, it's like, I want that future. It's something that's a great promise. How can we take evidence from there? And in the foresight world, we call it backcasting. We take that evidence, we bring it back to today, and we create stronger strategic thinking and planning. We do more risk planning as well. I mean, here's the reality. There's going to be more pandemics. Are they going to be at the scale like this? Well, it's been about 100 years since we've been at this scale. But, we've had SARS and MERS. We had the AIDS epidemic as well, which is ultimately at pandemic levels through the 80s and 90s. We're always going to be that way because that dimension of infinite humanity is biology and ecology. And you know what? As we encroach on that natural environment with the cities that we build, we're going to get more of these coronaviruses, and there's about 7-8 million of them out in the wild, and they're going to come into the human system. Now what we have to do, we have to anticipate what could happen. And if you think back to over a year ago, what would have happened if this would have been contained? Life would have been fine. If communications would have been better. If we would have shut down flying and all that global movement more quickly. I think we've learned a lot in the last year. And I think that this is going to be, there's a lot of important lessons. I hope that global collaboration improves because it's certainly a challenge right now. I think that in the next sort of 5 to 10 years, you're going to see a shift of power. You're going to have China, the biggest global economy, India number 2, USA number 3, and we can either divide the world or we can come together and sort of transcend those geopolitical boundaries.
A beautiful way to close. We can divide the world or we can come together. That, you know, Nick, outstanding. Everything you shared with us this morning has been fantastic. I'm sure everyone has been inspired, and we'll be looking for to read some of your science fiction glimpses into the future to help guide us today. So thank you for making time to come to us today. It's just been from all of us to you. Thank you. Thank you so much for what you did. Delighted to have you. And so we're gonna shift gears in about 30 seconds. We'd like to encourage you folks to join the next presentation, which is technology and the future. And we have some 3 amazing presenters, Justin Rudwell, Mel Barsky, and Jessica McNaughton. They've got some really interesting things to share with you. So switch over to those. We'll see you all later. Nick, have an extraordinary day, and thank you for being part of our world today.
Welcome to the future, Bill.
Take care, man. Bye now.
Are we good, Bill?
We've still got some people hanging around in the room. They'll slowly move out.
Good. Shall I just leave the session, Bill?
Yeah, I guess we could. So thank you again, Nick. Absolutely spectacular.
Thanks so much, Bill. I really appreciate everything. And if you're still online listening to me, thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Take care, man. Bye.